A man with a cast on his right leg and crutches under his arms backs a horse trailer off a pickup truck in the Churchill Downs parking lot. It is the morning of May 2nd, 2009. Around him, grooms in polished boots lead horses worth 7 figures toward stakes barns with security posted at the door. This is the Kentucky Derby. Old money, old bloodlines, the best stables in the world, on the first Saturday in May, the way it has always been. Yet the morning line favorite would be gone by noon, and the horse that would win it all had been bought as a yearling for less than the price of the truck that hauled him 1,400 miles to get here. So how does a $9,500 horse beat an industry that pays out $2 million in purse money on a single afternoon? What almost nobody in the crowd of 153,563 knew that afternoon was that the cheap horse story they were about to celebrate was not quite as cheap or as clean as it looked. The story begins not at Churchill Downs, but at a yearling sale in Kentucky 2 years earlier, where a horse nobody wanted sold for less than a used truck. Mind That Bird was born on May 10, 2006, sired by Birdstone, the horse who had denied Smarty Jones a Triple Crown in the 2004 Belmont Stakes, out of a mare named Mining My Own. There was no fairy tale in the pedigree, just bloodlines good enough to get noticed, and not good enough to guarantee anything. At the Fasig-Tipton, Kentucky October yearling sale in 2007, a Canadian trainer named David Cody bought him for $9,500. Not a bargain by design, a bargain because almost nobody else in the ring was bidding. Cody trained him out of Woodbine Racetrack in Toronto and put a young jockey named Chantal Sutherland in the saddle. Under her, the colt won the Silver Deputy Stakes, and in October of 2008, the Grade 3 Grey Stakes, a result strong enough to earn him the Sovereign Award as Canadian Champion 2-year-old male horse. Sutherland had found something in him. She would never get to ride him again. Because after the Grey Stakes, Mind That Bird was sold. $400,000, 42 times what he had cost as a yearling. The buyers were a new partnership out of Roswell, New Mexico, Double Eagle Ranch, run by a man named Mark Allen, and Buena Suerte Equine, run by a veterinarian named Dr. Leonard Block. Block had earned his veterinary degree from Colorado State University in 1960 and spent nearly a decade working the backstretch as a track veterinarian before he built the largest quarter-horse breeding operation in the country out of a Santa Fe practice. Allen brought something else to the partnership. That will matter later. Not yet. The new trainer was Benny Chip Woolley Jr., a rancher's son out of Dalhart, Texas, who had built his own stable in Sunland Park, New Mexico, on quarter-horse instincts, stamina and conditioning over raw speed. Woolley and Allen had known each other since 1998, when they met the way men in small New Mexico towns sometimes do, on opposite sides of a bar fight at a place called Annie Get Your Guns in Raton. Woolley, a stranger at the time, waded in on Allen's side. 11 years later, that loyalty had not gone anywhere. Under Woolley, the colt did not announce himself. Second place in the Borderland Derby on February 28, 2009. Fourth in the Sunland Derby a month later. Solid enough to enter the Kentucky Derby field. Nowhere near enough to be taken seriously in it. The consensus belonged to a different horse. I Want Revenge went off as the 3-to-1 morning line favorite, the kind of price that tells an entire industry where to look. Then, on Derby Day itself, he was scratched, lame in the left front foot, the first time in the race's history that the morning line favorite came off the board on the day of the race itself. Friesen Fire, fresh off a win in the Louisiana Derby, absorbed the money and became the new favorite at 19-5. Mind That Bird did not move. 50-1, and he stayed there. Not one handicapper in the building revised him upward when the favorite disappeared. 19 three-year-olds walked into the starting gate that afternoon in front of a crowd of 153,563, the largest in Derby history to that point, and the horse who would win it was priced like he did not belong among them. There was more working against the operation than the odds board admitted. Woolley himself had broken his right leg in a motorcycle accident that winter, the exact town lost to inconsistent reporting. Only New Mexico reliably confirmed. He worked the week of the biggest race of his life on crutches, in a cast, unable to fully run his own barn. His older brother, Bill Woolley, stepped in to handle the daily training work in his place. A capable man was standing by, ready to take over. The industry's read on the whole operation was simple. A second-tier horse. An injured trainer out of a small New Mexico outfit. No realistic path to the winner's circle. There was no press conference that week, no early feature on the underdog angle. Just a rancher trainer on crutches, walking the shed row every morning because watching from a hotel room was never going to be an option for him. Getting to Louisville became its own contest. Woolley would not sit out the trip. He loaded Mind That Bird into a trailer behind his Ford F450 Lariat and drove nearly 1,500 miles from his New Mexico base to Churchill Downs himself, cast and crutches included, with one stop in Texas to rest. 21 hours on the road. His brother could have made the drive. Woolley made it anyway. The same stubbornness that had put him in the middle of a stranger's bar fight in 1998, now keeping him behind the wheel of a truck hauling the longest shot at the wire. He said it plainly, later, the kind of line a man says only once he knows how the story turned out. You know who wins the Kentucky Derby every year? The man who brings the best horse that day. And for one day, it was me. There was no grand arrival. No press pack waiting at the barn, no name anyone in Louisville recognized. Just a man in a cowboy hat, a cast, and a horse nobody had bothered to take seriously, unloading into a stakes barn built for names like Pioneer of the Nile and I Want Revenge. Calvin Borel got the call to ride him, a jockey with multiple Grade 1 wins already to his name, but a man with no history on this particular horse until days before the race. Borel had built a career on one habit other jockeys considered reckless: riding the rail, saving ground nobody else was willing to take. It had made him money before. On paper, it was one more reason to look away from Mind That Bird entirely. The horse that unloaded from that trailer bore no outward sign of what he would become in 72 hours. Unremarkable to look at, unremarkable on paper. The kind of horse a barn full of professionals could walk past without a second glance. After the race, Woolley would say only 4 words, and they would be repeated for years. They'll know who I am now. May 2nd, 2009, Churchill Downs. 153,563 people, and a racetrack turned to soup by overnight rain, officially labeled sloppy. 19 horses loaded into the gate. Woolley's instructions to Borel were almost insultingly simple, by his own account years later. All Chip Woolley wanted was for me to take him back. Not to win, just to survive the opening scramble. The start did not go clean. Mind That Bird got knocked around in the pack and dropped back hard, buried near the rear of a 19-horse field on a track already chewed to mud. Borel himself did not expect much. I was hoping to make a run and not really expecting to win, he said afterward, thinking he would maybe run 3rd or 4th. Then, at the 3/8 pull, he asked the horse a question. I asked him a little, and he took me to the second-to-last horse very quick, Borel said. Through the turn, he committed to the move that had built his whole career. He took Mind That Bird to the rail, the inside path other jockeys consider too tight, not worth the risk on a sloppy track crowded with tiring horses. He ducked out once, around one fading horse, then dove back to the fence and threaded a gap between the rail and a horse named Join in the Dance that had no business being there a second later. "After that, when I turned for home, I thought I was a winner," Borel said. He was running and they were stopping. The gap he needed opened and closed almost in the same instant. It was tight, but when horses are closing that fast, you will get through so quick. Then the wire. On the broadcast, NBC's Tom Durkin had been calling other horses when Mind That Bird appeared on the inside, and the surprise is audible in the tape itself. "Down toward the inside, coming on through. That is, Mind That Bird. Now is coming on to take the lead as they come to the finish. In a spectacular upset, Mind That Bird has won the Kentucky Derby. An impossible result here." He won by 6 3/4 lengths, the largest margin in more than 60 years of Derby finishes, in a time of 2 minutes, 2.66 seconds for the mile and a quarter. The final number on the tote board read 50.60 to 1, at that moment tied for the second longest price in Derby history since 1913. Longer shots have won since. On that particular afternoon, no price that steep had crossed the wire in generations. The purse for the race totaled $2,177,200. The winner's share alone was $1,417,200. No horse had run that gap tighter. No jockey had trusted the rail more. No crowd had gone quiet that fast in 6 decades of the race. Nobody had revised Mind That Bird's number when the favorite scratched that morning. Every other horse in the field got repriced by an industry doing math in real time. He didn't. He crossed the wire at exactly the number nobody believed in. This is where the story is supposed to end. A cheap horse, an injured trainer, a fearless jockey, a photograph for the ages. It does not end there. After the Gray Stakes win in October of 2008, 7 months before the Derby, Mind That Bird had already changed hands for $400,000, 42 times his yearling price, to Mark Allen's Double Eagle Ranch and Leonard Blosch's Buena Suerte equine. Both men were neighbors outside Roswell, New Mexico. By the time he crossed the wire at Churchill Downs, he had not been a $9,500 horse for a year and a half. Mark Allen was the son of Bill Allen, the former chief executive of Veeco Corporation, an Alaska oilfield services company. In 2007, Bill Allen pleaded guilty to bribery, extortion, and conspiracy in one of the largest political corruption cases in Alaska's history, a case that became central to the federal prosecution of United States Senator Ted Stevens. As part of Bill Allen's cooperation agreement, federal prosecutors explicitly declined to charge his son. Mark Allen was not charged, was not indicted, was barely even named in most of what got written the next morning. That immunity had been written into the deal, in plain terms, even as Bill Allen testified under oath that his son had personally handed several $1,000s in cash to an Alaska state legislator back in 2003. Mark Allen financed his end of a broader spree of horse purchases, this one included, from roughly $30 million in proceeds from the sale of his Veeco stock in 2007. Blood Horse reported the connection 2 days after the Derby win. Block's own account of his business partner shifted depending on who was asking. At first, he barely knew Allen. Then they had been friends and partners for years. Yet none of it made the broadcast, the winner's circle, or the headlines the next morning. None of it made Mark Allen a criminal either. The law had already decided that, in writing, before the horse ever left the yearling sale. The title promised simple arithmetic. $9,500 against an industry that pays out millions on a single spring afternoon. The purest kind of upset money can buy. The sealed answer is that the arithmetic was already out of date before the gate ever opened. By the time Mind That Bird ran in the Kentucky Derby, he had not been a $9,500 horse for a year and a half. He was a $400,000 horse, and part of the fortune behind that second purchase had already been sworn about, under oath, in a federal courtroom 2,000 miles away and 2 years earlier. Nobody in the crowd of 153,563 was doing that math. An industry built on recalculating odds down to the decimal, on pricing every conceivable outcome before a single horse loads into the gate, spent that whole afternoon marveling at how cheap the winner had once been. Nobody mentioned that some of the money that got him to the starting gate had already been sworn about under oath in a federal courtroom. This is not an accusation. The law had already ruled, in writing, that Mark Allen owed no one an explanation for any of it. The story simply chose the version it liked better, the one with a cast and a pickup truck in it, not the one with a courtroom in it. The man with the cast and the crutches got his truck to Louisville, the horse got his name on a trophy, and the industry got the story it wanted, the cheap one. The trophy did not ask where the money came from. The record book did not ask. Nobody at the wire that afternoon asked. The friendship that started in a bar fight in Raton in 1998 ended 11 years later in a winner's circle in Louisville. The stubbornness was real, even if the price tag on the myth was not. Chantal Sutherland, the jockey who first saw what was in this horse, watched the biggest afternoon of his life from somewhere in the saddle. Mind That Bird retired on November 7, 2010, with career earnings of $2,228,637 and was inducted into the Canadian Horse Racing Hall of Fame in 2015. As of a visit to the Kentucky Derby Museum in April of 2024, 15 years after that afternoon, he was still alive, grazing on a ranch outside Ponca City, Oklahoma. Was Mind That Bird the purest underdog story racing ever produced? Or did the sport just choose the version of the story it liked better? Share your thoughts below. Thanks for watching.